Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Internet Dads. Myself and Rory are delighted to be joined by a guest today who's none other than Jordan Schwarzenberger.
Hello.
Welcome.
Jordan, how are you?
I'm very well, guys. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm not going to lie, Rory. I'm actually very excited.
I know, it's a fantastic book. You did well here.
Well, should I tell you why? Because I think, firstly, the fact that a lot of people know you for many reasons, but being the manager of the Sidemen, very good friends of ours, of course, is an amazing job, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But being honest, the main reason I wanted you on this pod is I reached out to you. I followed you for a while, but I watched or listened to a different podcast you were on, and I have to admit, I was amazed by it. I thought it was amazing. It's a two-parter as well.
Very kind.
For many reasons. I mean, first of all, obviously, we're a dad's pod. So you are a younger man than us. How old are you now?
28.
28. I can't believe that you're 28, by the way, the stuff you've done in your career.
Yeah.
But you also, crucially, have 3 kids and identical twins on the way.
2 for 1.
Mate.
Oh my God, mate. Are you all right? Are you feeling
It's
good?
a great question, Rory. I ask myself this every day. It's 7 weeks away as well now.
Oh, really?
Mate.
Yeah, 7-8 weeks. So
Oh my
it's going to be a busy Christmas.
5 kids.
5 kids.
So
In
how old
today's
your
world
oldest?
is...
Nearly 6. So 5.
So you're gonna have
There'll be a month and a bit where it'll be
5
5
under
under
6.
6. Yeah.
Oh my
So
God.
what are you? What is
Yeah.
your? I mean, we can say anything in this pod. Are you shitting yourself? Because I would be.
You know what? Maybe naively, no. And the reason I'd say that is, my wife's amazing. So obviously she's just like got everything locked down. But also, I feel like you get into a template with it where like it's almost, maybe this is wrong, but I don't know if adding more in changes the difficulty other than the logistics. Because when you get up to 3, especially now, like you've got the routines, everything's so well set and ordered. And I feel like, after 3 especially, you become, for me anyway, I only speak for myself, but become good at it now in a way that I definitely wasn't second time around.
Yeah.
Second time around was this like kick of first time, almost the dream in a way. And the second time, everything's so different, right? And we had like reflux for 18 months for the second and didn't sleep literally for like a year. And after that, you go, okay, now I know how to like really get in the trenches as a parent. And then I think third time around, it's been like really quite easy and straightforward compared to the second. So I don't know. No, as long as everything's all right,
makes perfect.
we'll see.
You know more than us, mate. You know more than us. We haven't got 3.
Does it not affect? Does it not affect things? So look, you're now a professional nappy changer, for example. You're never
I was
going to be
thinking about
intimidated.
how many nappies have I changed in my
loads
in my life?
Yeah,
a
loads.
lot more.
Oh,
2 at once as well.
I know.
Twins.
It's like
Yeah,
literally,
mate.
No, but this is the thing. Everything's double car.
But this is it. You're going to have to buy a new car. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
New car, potentially new house.
As this
Going on holiday, you're going to need 2 rooms.
7 people in a car.
7
You have to have a
people in a
7
car.
seater.
7 seats.
Well, this is the thing as well. Gone through this whole. I'm now a van expert. I understand all the dynamics of vans and what to do there. Because the problem is, a 7-seater car for 5 kids doesn't really work because they have the fake 7 seats at the back.
Yeah.
So you kind of fold them out, and then there's no space to put anything, right? So what happens if you have obviously a buggy or a twin buggy, which are these like fat things that just fold out like that, and then never mind any stuff that you need. So I've gone for a van. Gone for a van. Gone for the.
Do you live in London?
Electric or no?
Electric.
I've got my eye on one of them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
mental.
One thing I'm scared of is like, how am I going to park it? Because it's so tight on our road anyway.
Yeah.
In a Tesla, never mind in a so VW ID Buzz 7-seater. That's one we've got.
Is that where you're going?
And I was randomly on the way here. I was in it in the cab.
Oh, wait.
And I was
wait.
looking around. I was like, this is nice space. Like the seats
yeah.
roll back. Like, I can see myself in it.
I love that. I've got my eye on one. I'm actually not because I've only got 2 kids, but I've always liked them. And then the idea of it having I've got an electric car at the moment, but I quite fancy that, and I fancy just the ability. Even though I'll never use it, I like the ability. The idea. Yours will be obviously full on car mode, but I like the ability of turning it into putting a bed in the back and just sleeping.
Well, that's it.
Like that.
And if you take the 2 back, it's like this huge space. So it just felt like the right option. And
you were going to be the busiest man in the world because obviously career-wise, you have a very interesting career that we obviously have to speak about. But 5 kids leaves nothing left, room for anything.
You know, I've always had this sense, and again, I might be wrong, that you can always push it and see how, for me anyway, see how busy you can be and how far you can go, and actually your level improves the more you push those boundaries. I've kind of always done that, and maybe naively, and gone, well, how much busy can I get? I think, the president of the United States is busy. I can't be that busy, whatever I'm doing, in a way. Maybe again,
I'm not sure how busy he is.
Well, yeah,
Maybe spend a lot of time on a golf course. That
well, yeah, or like pick anyone who's doing, a real kind of, Calvin Harris going to Ibiza. Do you know what I mean? Like, how busy can you really be? And I always thought in my mind, actually, let me push it and see, and continually push it. And I think as a result, my level of work's gone up in terms of speed of doing things. I can get things done a lot quicker. I'm more efficient, more discerning. It's actually just made me improve tenfold. I always say, like, having kids is the best hack actually for work, because you become so much, I found anyway, for me, so much better at work.
Yeah, you said
because you have to be discerning, you have to be efficient, you have to up your
Yeah,
game
I
so
adopted.
much, because you've now got a real job at home.
Did you do it? Did you do it for this reason? If I'm totally honest, right? The reason that I've adopted a Lutheran work ethic is because being at work is so much easier than being at home.
Totally. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
No, the real job's when you get back.
Yeah, no, I
this
completely
is like
agree.
pre-game.
I was so wrong, and
Yeah.
obviously, like I have 2 kids. I have a 6-year-old and a baby. When I didn't have any children, I didn't understand that work was at home. I didn't understand the idea of, you know, people say, "Oh, I'm a stay-at-home mum as a job." I'd be like, that doesn't sound particular. That sounds quite. It's impossible, isn't it? It's like, you know, on the odd day when I have to stay in, like on the even just for the odd hour, like Victoria's got a work chat or something like that. I'm like, wait, what? How am I supposed to do this?
Yeah, and that is the real job, and it's to be honest, the most important job, right? It puts everything into perspective, and I think it makes work, whatever you do in work, generally speaking, seem like it pales in comparison to the significance of that job you got to do when you get home, and also just the kind of brute, kind of crude nature of it. Like, you got to change nappies, you got to sort like the kids fighting, whatever it might be. It's like it's a totally different job, but it's the one that actually matters. I think, and that's why work has to be put in its right place when you have kids. I think, and I think the problem we all have, I've definitely had it. You guys might have had it as well, but it's just the tension between those two worlds. And actually, as long as they're in their right place and they're given their right time, and that doesn't become that, and that doesn't fall, you know, then everything's ordered and it works well. But often the balance, and we talk about work-life balance, I think it's really hard to understand that. Also, if you don't have kids, I think a lot of people can't understand, well, why would, let's say, work not be your entire life? And in reality, when you have kids, you know, you're going back to your proper job, really.
It does. I agree, certainly in principle. But have you found this as well? Because of the severity of your home life now, there's people that are depending on you. There's a lot of people that are depending on you. Suddenly the jeopardy around your job actually becomes really significant. Succeeding in your
jeopardy
job
can be good, can't it? It can give you that.
can be impetus, I guess.
Motivation.
And,
This
focus.
has to work.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you get comfortable, you don't feel that fear, that motivation comes from it. But I think the words I'm picking up on here, and it's quite relevant to a clip we had from a few episodes ago that went a bit viral, was this perspective and context. So we were talking about basically saying, look, and we were very kind with the way we said it. And we were very honest and saying, look, and I was like, I get it, because when I didn't have kids, I was busy. In my world, I was busy, and no one could tell me I wasn't. But now I have the context you can only get from now experiencing something different. I know that I thought I was busy. And it's not to judge people that don't have kids and don't feel busy right now. It's just talking about context. It's saying, look, you are busy, but if and when you experience this, you will no longer look at that like that anymore. Yeah. So the idea of 5 is mad, but a lot of people say, you know, 3 is the point of no return. Once you get to 3, or maybe even 2, but certainly once you get to 3, your life revolves around that anyway. So maybe, layering on a 4 and a 5th, it's not so much that your life is crazy, it's that your life is already crazy. So it's just
keep it going, man. Like, you might as well. But also to the point of being busy, I think it was, I saw the clip and it was interesting, the reaction. For me, it's more that you have more external forces against your life now that are forcing you to be busy in a different way. Whereas on your own, it's all up to you. So you can be the busiest person in the world doing whatever it is that you want to do in your work and like traveling, whatever it might be. And you can be incredibly busy. So people wouldn't understand that, no, you're not talking about busy based on your choices. You're talking about external factors forcing your life to mold in a certain way and to sacrifice what you want to do. And
you have a smaller window to do things for yourself, which is not a bad thing. But also people were like, oh, I hate when parents complain. We were like, no, we're not complaining because we choose this and we're very happy with this. But we're also allowed to vent and sort of say like, oh, we can't believe that we used to feel this way. This is what we've learned. You know what I mean? But we all get that.
You know the moment. So you've got 3 kids at home. You then have the wonderful news that a 4th is on the way. Yeah. You then presumably go for a scan and find out that also a 5th is on the way. Is that how it works?
Well, this is the thing. So we've always done these like 6-week scans.
Yeah, of course.
You know, nosy and a bit busy, right? Yeah. In Harley Street. I remember we went to the 6-week scan, and I think my wife merely kind of had a inkling that, I don't know, something was a bit different. Because we go to the scan and she just said, oh yeah, that there's definitely not like 2 in there. And no, the person there's looking at it. And obviously it's really small, 6 weeks, right? Baby's tiny. And they go, no, there's only one in there.
Really?
Yeah, 100%, only one. And we're like, okay, cool. Yeah, great. Okay. Haha, joke's over. And then we go to the 3-month scan and we told the midwife at the 3-month scan that, you know, we'd been to the early one and they said only one in there, only one.
But were you thinking because twins run in the family?
No.
Not?
And this is the other thing we've come to learn. And I'll finish the story and then I'll get on to that. But we get into the 3-month scan and the midwife goes, yeah, you went to the scan before, there's only one in there. Yeah, cool. Millie lies down. And they put the gel and everything else. And the woman goes, she's like, wait. She's like, how many do you think were in there? We're like, we just said one. She spins the screen around. There's 2 heads.
Oh my God.
I just burst out laughing. Millie's like, what? I cannot stop laughing. I'm like, this is hilarious. Like, what do you mean? Like, this is so funny. And obviously what had happened at the 6th week is the other one was hiding, right? That must have just been, somewhere else, but you couldn't see. And that can sometimes happen. You've got stories of people who have twins, even who think they're having twins, and then a third was hiding the whole time. Like that can actually happen.
You hear stories about twins like eating the other one in the
this is
room as
also
well.
happened. So we've also gone through another thing we've also been through with this. I mean, then you get into the whole identical. They're identical. So what does that mean? It means they share a placenta. And then you get into the problems with that, right? So identical twins, I think 1 in every 5 twins or something are identical, and then I think so. And then the other, I can't remember the name, but the non-identical twins are the ones that have their own placenta, have their own amniotic.
It could be boy and girl, but
boy and girl. So
identical.
and that's exactly.
Do you know the sex?
Girls, so
Both
identical girls.
And what have you got already?
2 boys and a girl. So
wow.
it swung nicely because I think that would have been a bit
Yeah.
chaotic with 4. But then we've also had this whole thing go on with them, which can happen with identical twins, called twin-to-twin syndrome. I don't know if you saw what Jessie Nelson went through with her kid, but she was very open about it with her partner. And what happens with that is you can get a situation when they're sharing a placenta where one starts basically taking too much from the other. And you end up in a position, it can appear around 16 weeks or so, where they can both basically die because the one that is taking too much gets overworked and they can't keep up. And then the one that's taking too little basically gets malnourished. So Millie's like, again, she's 14, 15 weeks in. She's kind of, I don't know, she had something, she was feeling like something's not 100% right. She goes and checks out. She goes on the Wednesday, and it's important that it's on a Wednesday. And she goes in, because with twins, you get scans every 2 weeks, right? normally you get one at 5 months, 5 months. With twins, identical.
For everyone, not...
Right. So this is like NHS with every 2 weeks, because they know that stuff can like this can go down. She goes to scan on the Wednesday, and Millie's like, obviously gets it, and she says, the doctor says, you can see this, right? There's no fluid basically around this baby, and the baby's really small. Like one's really small, one's really big. You've almost definitely got this twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. She was like, you need to go and see this one person tomorrow. Like you have to go see him tomorrow, not a question about it. And I used to work with him because otherwise it might be a problem. She kind of played it down a little bit. She goes, and this is on the Wednesday. He only works, Professor Nicolades, right, at King's College. He only works Tuesday and Thursday. This is on the Wednesday. On the Thursday, she goes to see him. And this man basically invented fetal medicine. So he's like an absolute celebrity star in medicine because he created the concept of actually like servicing and operating on fetuses when they're in the room. Anyway, goes in, interesting thing. And then he says, right, this is like really severe, 16 weeks. If we leave it a week, they're both going to die.
Wow.
And so she's just like, what do you mean? They're both dying? So like, this is definitely going to happen. So we have to operate right now. We'd never normally do it, but we have to operate right now. And so the operation is, you basically put a tube into the side of the womb and you get a laser, right? And you like push a tube in, get a laser, you push it through the tube, and then the blood vessels, which are the sort of the joining force between the babies and the placenta, and that's what's causing the problem because the blood vessels are connecting baby to baby. And so one's basically taking, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but they're taking too much from the other. They get a laser and they break up the blood vessels. So what that does then is it separates and moves them out. And then effectively, if they survive that, which is 50% survival rate,
Oh my
right?
God, mate.
Then you're typically right, and they're they're fine afterwards.
In a 24-hour period, you're going through this like.
Mate, so I remember being like, wait, what? And she's calling me. Obviously, she's crying, she's upset, and she's with her mum and her sister because she didn't think this would be happening. And then she's like, yeah, I've just got to have to do this thing now. She just got on with it. And then, but also interestingly, because he's such a celebrity and he's doing this operation, they must have put it in a WhatsApp group in the hospital. So all these people are like sat like, crowding around because it's such a big sort of thing to see.
How tried and tested is this?
He's been doing it for 40 years or something.
Oh, so
it's actually a Netflix I'll get onto it, but there's a Netflix documentary, pretty much exactly the same case about him and this whole thing because he created this in the 70s or something.
Wow.
He did the first one. You could imagine they talk about it in the doc, how nervous he would be doing the first one because he came up with this idea of getting this tube, getting this laser, slotting it in, and then firing at the blood vessels. And that was a theory, but it worked. And
generally, this sort of science, I find it incredible because you think it sounds like it was good in this case, but sadly, to discover this technology, there must be some casualties. There must be some things that go wrong. I mean, you got eye surgeries, all these crazy surgeries.
Yeah,
like, how did they know this worked?
No, but this guy's like, I mean, you can see why he is held up as almost
right.
So anyway, so he does the surgery, and same day, literally, and this is the Wednesday she finds out. Thursday she goes in, and then surgery takes place, and literally the consent form is like 50% chance of both surviving, 25% chance of one surviving. Like you just got to get it done, right? There's no option, only one way through. And Millie, my wife's like very pragmatic with this stuff. She's like, there's no other option. You have to get it done. And so she does it, and they check, and you could imagine the nerves. I wasn't there because I can't remember where I was, but this wasn't expecting all of this to happen so quickly. And then an hour later, they do a scan. So they check and they see, are they both alive? And half the time they're not, right? Half the time. So this is like end game stuff.
Jordan, my God.
Yeah, mate, it's crazy. But thankfully they're both totally fine. And then almost miraculously, actually, she went for a scan on the Saturday because that first week was just like full of nerves, right? Because we were just there going, okay, like you're almost waiting for some fluid or something to kind of show that there'd been a problem. You're almost waiting for a problem. But she goes on the Saturday, and they're like, yeah, at this stage, they're still both here, still good, we're okay. She then goes the following week, and they're like almost fully recovered.
Wow.
And then fast forward now,
shout out to this guy. What's his name?
Professor Nicolaides at King's College. What a legend!
Next level scientist.
And people often bring the kids back, so we're gonna have to take the
absolutely.
Yeah, but then
how did your wife particularly cope with that 24-hour period?
I mean, she got on with it, but obviously, I mean, I think she's very pragmatic in that sense that there's only one way through it.
Yeah, you have to do it.
And also the other challenges, and you'll know this, but pregnancies, they reflect how the mum's feeling and sort of their stress levels and their anxiety levels. Like cortisol has such a massive impact on the health of the baby's health of the pregnancy. So the more stressed out you are, often increased chances of miscarriage and all this sort of stuff. So she was very cautious to try and keep calm because actually that's what could have, especially in that first week, cause more problems. But it was just this thing of like waiting almost for a problem at that first week, and thankfully it went right. And then you fast forward, and the twin that was not the donor. The donor was one taking. No, the donor was the one that was too small. Was overtaking the one. Now bigger, so that everything then worked out and was fine. And she's been. I mean, this was maybe 12 weeks ago.
Yeah, man.
For a long time.
You've been through it, man.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a lot.
But then the crazy thing is when you got 3 kids at home as well, it's just like life carries on, right?
And work, and all the plates have to keep spinning, don't they?
Yeah, so you just business as usual. But yeah, so far so good. But
yeah, man. Yeah,
crazy. So I'd never knew about any of this stuff.
This is what we were saying recently on a side note when my father-in-law passed away a few months ago. Is as much as you have to process it and deal with that trauma, I guess. You got kids at home, you haven't really got time, which I think can be a good thing as long as you process it in your own way in time. And like we had a 5-week break from the death to when the funeral actually happened, which is good and bad because it was bad in the sense of you start to kind of get back to life and then you have to go through that day again and remember everything. But also it allowed time to get back into the routine. And other friends who've lost people who maybe don't have kids and don't have family or partners, all they have is their grief. And so I think it's as long as you process it, it's really important. And what you went through is a trauma, but it's like a good trauma, I guess, in the sense that you came through it, but it's still distressing. Your stress levels go through the roof. I don't know if this is a weird thing to say or not, but like when they go to you, there's 2 heads. Is there ever a question where you're like, are they conjoined or anything?
You know
like,
what?
Is that 2 heads on one body sort of thing?
They were so swimming around. I didn't cross my mind actually about that. I think it was more just, what do you mean there's 2? Like, as in, it was a comment. It was like a moment from like The Office. It was so ridiculous and funny because the way she just spun the screen and then there's just these 2 swimming heads, and we'd obviously had it. And I'm like, but Millie as well. She knew. I know that she had a sense for it because she kept kind of making these little jokes. All the jokes were like, oh, maybe there's 2. But also she threw up. Like she's never thrown up before. Like that first trimester, she's 3 pregnancies, never really been sick at all in that early stage. But with the twins, I mean, she'd throw up like violently sick for the first trimester, like in a way that she'd never been before. And that was also a bit weird. It was like, okay, there's something going on. And again, people say like twin pregnancies are different levels of sickness and intensity because you've just got double the load, right? I think
imagine these people though, like, so what you're going through, you've got 3. First of all, I think it says a lot about your demeanor that you were almost laughing about it. Some people would be like, what? Like, I can't believe that. But I've said before, in my like efficient brain, try and do things efficiently in life, I would have loved to have twins first and almost be done. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot of people that have 2 kids under 2, like not twins, but it's a real trenches for a few years, but then you're through it and you crack on the rest of your life. That version of twins is quite nice, that idea. But when you've already got 3, imagine these people. There's a TV show about this American couple. I think they had 3 kids and then they go and they find out they're having six tuplets.
Oh, God.
So it goes from 3 to 9 in one go. Like what you're going through from 3 to 5 is still major when you weren't expecting it. But imagine if in that room they're gone, there's 6 in there.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, there's got to be a number that panics you at some point, Jordan.
you know
What is
what?
it?
Two. Twins is terrifying.
But I would say for me, I was 21. My wife was 20 when we had our first, right? So like young, and then
That's young, yeah.
through. But if I was 21 and we had twins, oh my! Because the first time around, like total trenches, as it probably was for you guys as well, right? You're just slapped with this reality of life so different now. It's incredibly difficult, and it's amazing that you can overcome that, and then your level gets up, and you know, you look at that and go, oh, that's easy now, right? And everything in terms of your own standard for being a parent and what sleep you can deal with and all those things, you're just standard raises. But that beginning first 3 months, I remember, was just like trench wolf. I was like, what the hell? And if you had twins of that,
that could have broken me actually. The first baby, that could have broken me. The twins there.
Oh yeah. So now again, I look at it and go like templates there. We know what we're doing. We've got.
Do you have grandparent support local?
So it's in Crouch End. So my parents are around the corner, literally like 5 minutes. We're in the same area that I grew up.
Right.
In.
Nice.
And then yeah.
Oh, you Crouch End? Is that where?
Yeah, Crouch End. And then my Millie's mum's in Primrose Hill, not too far.
Nice.
So yeah. Good support.
So what do you think is going to be tougher, managing 5 kids or managing 7 Sidemen?
Oh, man. You know what? I always say this, right? The Sidemen are, I mean, genuinely, like the easiest people in the world. I think partly also now, because they're all in that stage of their lives where they're kind of increasingly, you know, moving out and etc. So they've never not been easy, but I think they're increasingly easy because, again, to your point on like work, life, what those things mean in relation to your family and prioritization and, you know, time, etc. They're just more discerning around like, well, this is the time, this is what we need to do, and we need to go in, go out, and then get back to our families. Like that's where you move to, and that's, I think, a healthy place to be.
Yeah, people are generally quite easy, well, certainly easier to deal with when they're closer to 30 than they are 20.
Totally.
So if you've dealt with them young, you can probably deal with them as they get older. It's like babies, isn't it? It's like I'm hoping at least. Well, in fact, definitely, my oldest, Clementine, is far easier at 6 than she was at 6 months.
Yeah.
She was a silent.
But then I imagine, I mean, we know the Sidemen boys well, but what I've often compared them to is almost like boy band. Not in the sense of what they do, but in the sense of you've got all these different characters, maybe with different goals and ambitions, things they want to do. Some want to go this way, some want to go that way. Inevitably, normally, these groups do break up because you've got a Robbie Williams or you've got someone that wants to go and do something differently, or One Direction, whatever. So I think it's not only to those boys extreme credit, the length of success they've had and time they've been together, but obviously to people like you behind the scenes who are dealing with it all, because it doesn't mean there's any one person that's an issue or anything. There's just 7 different personalities. They all want different things. Like, and I guess it is a little bit like when you're going to have with 5 kids, you're going to have 5 personalities. Maybe the twins will be quite similar, but maybe not as well. And you've got to deal with all that. Do you think that's going to stand you in good stead for?
I think it might do. You know? I think because you know with the Sidemen and with Arcade and the structure we have, I think it works so well because I always say this, like there's no comparison to them, and not in any like weird lazy way, but there's no comparison to them in terms of all the variables work in favor of it working, if that makes sense. So there are 7 of them. It's the perfect number, right? It's enough for it to be
Tell that to S Club 7.
Well, I mean, maybe, true.
In what sense? Because because you can share the load.
You can share the load. So there's enough people for it to not be on any individual head too much.
Yeah.
There's a voting mechanic there that's natural Supreme Court number of 7, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's a good majority.
Is that how I'd like to pull the curtain back about like the Sidemen are obviously such an interesting crew. Is that the method you employ?
Yeah.
There is just
right?
total democracy. Yeah.
They also worked that out long before us.
Yeah.
So we're coming into the structure where they know how to manage themselves.
So if people are in the 3,
and
we've got to do this now, they just have to accept it and do it.
But very rarely is there a 4-3. Typically, it's they all kind of agree or not, but they know that there is that deadlock situation where there's a 4 and 3 that can run. And so, I mean, even I think about to launching Sides or any of the things we've done. You kind of go through the different decisions that need to be made, and they're just made on we literally do it on WhatsApp with a poll now. It's like so easy. Brand deal. Do you want to you interested in working with this brand or this partner? Or are you interested in? Did you like this logo? Whatever it is, decisions can be so quick. So that decision making is way easier than working with one. I mean, I worked with a number of people back in the day, obviously, for a long time at YMU and before, and you see there's more like emotional challenges with one person. They don't have that load to share. There's more risk, right? It's more reputationally on them if something goes wrong. So actually you get more anxiety and sort of worries about making decisions. Whereas with this group of 7, it's almost non-emotional and objective. It's like, what's the best decision? Do we all agree? Yes, go.
I also think they're at that point in their career as well where it is less emotional. It's like, is this a good business decision? Is it not? Right. Have I got time for it? Have I not? When they were younger, they were probably a little bit more thinking about the career path they want to take, and they've all got their own projects as well. But that is such a big career in itself. The Sidemen, it's an industry. It's not even a career at this point. Totally. It's a market, And I guess that's where they differ to say like a boy band, where it's a bit more maybe ego. I want to be the songwriter, or I want to be the star. This is actually no, we're a business group of.
But
business.
YouTube also caters to that because YouTube requires, I guess, a sort of outside intelligence to make it work. Like you have to be thinking about what's going to drive retention, what's going to be interesting conceptually, and that might actually be a non-emotional creative decision. It might be okay. Well, these things have worked over here, and this is what people seem to like more, so let's do more of that. So YouTube, I think, is quite good at favoring like non-emotion in a way. You can be quite detached from it because you have to be
the science.
making the right, the scientific choice around what's going to work and why. So again, the platform caters to that. I think their dynamic with each other caters. Everything works in favor of them working, and then again now it's like you're up to 50 people in the entertainment team, and around we've got 6 businesses together, been doing it for.
There's 50 people that work for this.
Huge.
50,
huge.
You're serious? They have 50 people.
I say they're an industry, mate. They're an
50
industry.
people, and it would, but that's including if you were to add in the restaurants.
Yeah.
It's probably 150 plus people.
Well, we saw that post came out last week from the government about recognising YouTube basically as an economic force in the country and giving us our flowers basically.
It's so late, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
It's so late. Like, I'm not the sharpest tool in the box, but even I knew that. I could have told you that. Like I could have told you that years ago.
Totally. And I think increasingly I look at it and go, well, I look back in history. I think, okay, when we all kind of came together and when it became more, I guess, corporate in the structure, it was the right time, right kind of collection of people, right objectivity from them. It just worked, and I think, thankfully, I think it would be difficult to try and do that now if that wasn't in place. If that makes sense, because what was able to happen is there was enough people bought in to sort of scale it up at the right time to then allow it to become almost like automated.
It's fascinating. Were you around for the genesis of it going from a group of mates who all played computer games together online to becoming this true business entity? Were you there for the change?
Well, I think it's intrigued. When would that change? I'm trying to think, when would I pinpoint that change to? I mean, their content operation was rolling before us, right? They had Sidemen clothing, and then they had obviously the main channels and second channel and Reacts, I think, at the time. And they got their content cadence, but they only had Tanya TPs. She was the only person on payroll. So it was one person. From that, then we come in 21 April. And Sam, who's my co-founder, Sam and Aaron, and Sam's been like the account. I don't know if he's the account for most of the UK YouTube scene for the last like 10 years. So he's always been like at the heart of their business from an accountancy and financial perspective. So he's seen it all. But I guess at that point, they almost gave the reins over really to us to then manage the business and the commercial side. And to be fair, from then on, we've been able to say, right, well, now we can build the business while you focus on the content. So it probably was actually that moment that it sort of went from being a content operation to being like a kind of full-scale business.
Well, I think the layers these guys have added, like, I mean, you probably don't even know this, but they've got their own VC fund now, and they've raised a lot of money, and they're doing like proper, it's not even a reflection on them. It's they couldn't have done this even if they wanted to. It's impossible to have enough hours in the day to be able to make content first and foremost.
When you say VC, what do you mean?
Yeah, so well, you explain.
Yeah, so we've got a venture. So and I'd say the way you would sort of segment the Sidemen businesses out is if you look at it as one big group, is you have content, so you have Sidemen Entertainment, and that includes Side Plus, which is the membership club, and then obviously the channel content, Sidemen Productions, which services Netflix. So those are like the content buckets. You've then got the consumer brands, so Sides, Best, and XX Vodka, the 3 of them. All 2 of them with JVs, 1 of them is run independently but with partners, Best. And then you have the VC venture, so the VC fund Upside. So that's a $25 million fund, target fund. It nearly closed, actually. Its final close on that, investing into pre-seed and seed tech businesses predominantly, that the Sidemen can leverage their distribution to help support and accelerate, as well as actually engaging with and using. So we've done, I think, 13, 14 investments, funds up like really nicely already. Like it's a good, for them, it's okay, you've got capital, you've got like liquidity. And this was the thing, like, how do you put that to use in the best way? And so it was maybe 3 years ago, we thought actually that would be a really good other verticals. So you've now got content, brands, and venture. Really
amazing. You know the people, and there's a large section of society that are quite sneery towards YouTube. I would love them to watch this episode. It's so impressive.
And
it really is.
What I think is really interesting is the amount of people who maybe did have that angle on it, say 5 years ago, who now think it's the best thing ever, and they're trying to tell everyone else how good it is, and you're like, yeah, but you didn't really get on board.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned the production wing. So did you say that services Netflix exclusively? So are you making content specifically for Netflix?
Yeah, they've got their show.
But
beyond, no, I know there's a Sidemen show on Netflix, but is it a production wing that also pitches other ideas, other productions to Netflix? Is that what you're creating?
Well, I think it's more that Inside now is becoming such a beast.
Yeah.
Actually, the vision for that always with Netflix was, well, look at Love Is Blind. I think one wouldn't even know, but they've got that in like 20 territories now.
Wow.
And they've just spun it out and out and out and out. So
My wife works on that.
yeah, it's great. Yeah. And so, the idea
Clearly,
of
as much as with you.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
Oh yeah. I walked into that one.
There we go.
You get to see dad jokes. There we go.
That's why we're here.
You're allowed to do 5 times that joke.
I know.
Crazy.
You get many a pass. But inside is, the vision for that. The reason why Netflix is really interesting is it becomes this vehicle to, if it kicks off and works, spin out into Dubai, inside Habibi, do you know what I mean? Whatever it is, and around the world. And Netflix is that global engine to do that. So I think that the production company side actually started with the documentary that we did, and that was self-funded, self-commissioned as well, sold to Netflix in the UK. Did we all got number 1, etc. And that was.
So did you make that as a punt? Did you decide that there was an angle for this? You believed in the idea. You funded it with the ambition of selling it, but no guarantee of it being commissioned.
With the documentary, yes. So that was not. It was me. It was Sidemen's money, not my money.
But your idea.
Yeah, collectively, we basically sat there and I remember where it was. It was on the set of the bit. If you look back, it was like the gate. It was like the board game IRL. It's like the big board game one where they have the cards and everything else. And we were on set there and we were talking about things. And one of the ideas was, look, you've got a 10-year anniversary coming up. This was last year. This is the 11th year. Last year? Yeah, I think it was last year. 2 years ago.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. I remember the party. Yeah, it's crazy.
23. So 10 years coming up because they were October 2013. You've only got one 10-year.
Yeah.
If we don't work now to build something for that 10-year, you miss it and then you don't really have that moment. So it's worth taking a punt on a documentary, on some kind of capstone for that then you could look to sell, and ideally that would be to Netflix. But it was a punt that it would actually land on Netflix. Yeah. Netflix was the one place we wanted it to be. And thankfully, through the production company Pangea, so Luke, I don't know if you've ever met Luke Himes back in the day, but Luke used to run production at YouTube Originals in the EMEAs. He was running that whole thing when that was set up before it dissolved. He produced a documentary. The boys met him on the Sidemen story back in the Sidemen show back in the day. So it was a nice tie there, and I'd met him as well. So we kind of had this group who had an in with Netflix, and we could sort of say, look, if we make this and make it well, it has a good chance. But yeah, you never know. And thankfully, it was taken on and got number 1. So it was a nice first moment. And that's why the production
absolutely amazing.
I want to take us on a bit. This stuff's fascinating, and I think we could easily, especially with our backgrounds in content and stuff, talk to you all day about that stuff. But I want to have a bit of a segue because. Obviously your dad's podcast, but also those pods that I listened to you on before, sent to them by a friend of mine who was more looking at the YouTube angle. And I'd followed you for a while anyway. I was well aware of the stuff you're doing. And, people should follow Jordan, by the way. He's really generous in if you're interested in this space, like the way you share insights and your thoughts on things, I think it's really good. You've also got your Read community service.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Community service is basically Grace Andrews is an absolute legend.
She's another one that's fascinating, by the way.
Amazing. So
Diary of the CEO.
Yeah,
one of the many brains behind it, but really integral part of it.
4th employee. Yeah. So back, literally when it was 10,000 subscribers, I think, and then obviously rode that up to 10 million and the biggest podcast. It's the biggest podcast in the world. And whatever anyone wants to say about their thoughts on Stephen or the show, whatever, he's way past any of that criticism because it's broken and it's broken in the States. So it's absolutely huge now, and they've got an unbelievable team around them. And she was really integral to that. So she's left. And me and her have always gotten well and sort of had, she's 27, so we've always been this sort of peers in the space and just had a lot of respect for each other, and basically thought, you know what, why don't we come together in a Substack form? So rather than doing a podcast, why do we write something every week that kind of distills our views, but also what is good about that for us is we get to keep on top of things by coming together and actually having that little brain trust. So not only is it just a good thing for us to do on a Zoom call anyway, when we're sort of debating stuff and then writing it out, but also it gives us the chance to encapsulate that in a way that others can kind of get that insight from us too. So that's where community service came effectively, which was us bringing our brains together, wresting through big ideas, and then putting. It's
a great name for it as well.
Yeah,
it's a great name.
The Read
the name came first. Often the best is the name comes first.
Yeah. Work backwards from the title.
Exactly.
So it's Read community service or the Instagram handle, isn't it? Yeah. But community service, I've signed up for it, and I think that that's really interesting. That side of your business. He was in Forbes 30 under 30, but they were actually just talking about how many kids he was going to have under 30. I think. But no.
Yeah. Got a way to go.
All this stuff going on, super interesting. But the bit that really piqued my interest when my friend sent me that podcast is actually, and I said to Rory when I was talking about you earlier, is it's a bit of a mix between him and me, because you're clearly a very thoughtful man. You're clearly someone who's pondered the big questions in life. You've had a very interesting, and forgive me if I describe this wrong, feel free to interject, but from what I picked up, you've had this sort of atheist upbringing almost, or early years. Secular. Yeah, very, very non-religious. You've obviously studied philosophy and theology and all these things to the point where I was amazingly impressed by your knowledge in that space. And you've gone through this probably in the same way that someone your age having 5 kids is very unusual nowadays, and that's not a reflection on it being a bad thing at all.
No,
I think it's a great thing,
Totally
but
weird.
it's completely
yeah,
weird.
totally
Yeah.
weird. Yeah.
But also, you've done this very almost opposite move that most of society feels like it's going, which is you've gone from, a non-believer to a believer. And Catholicism is a huge part of your life now.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit on that? And Rory is, as he describes himself, a God-fearing Catholic, brought up in that way. I wouldn't identify as an atheist. I would identify as someone as I'm open to everything, but I'm interested. I don't believe in dogmas. I don't believe in being, not so much. I think they're very useful. I think faith is an incredibly useful thing, but I also think that it is clearly used in a bad way a lot of the time. There's a lot of bad things being done across the board. I saw an amazing Instagram clip the other day. This guy, I think he's like a lorry driver, but he shares these thoughts on Instagram, and he says something like, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this actually. He says something like, Jesus was not a Christian. He was in the Judaism world or whatever. He stepped outside of the box, did things differently, and then it was created as a religion in name of him. He wasn't that thing. Buddha was not a Buddhist. Da, 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 da. And he's basically saying that like when we follow these religions, we're following the followers because they've created this idea. We're not. Are we actually still following in the footsteps of the person who stepped outside of the box and did things differently? And I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
Please tell me your thoughts on that.
Yes. I mean, when I say like, and this is on that podcast, I left it and I was like, oh man, like that was the most fun I've ever had in a podcast. Reason being is we talk, I love talking about content and social media, etc. But like what my genuine passion, what takes up all my time, what I read, I've got infinite books and spend all my time is philosophy, Catholicism, theology, etc. Like that's my like big sort of secret passion, if you will. So like to come on a space like that and be able to talk about it was great. And I think, yeah, like as I talked about a bit on that, my conversion was beyond a whirlwind in a way, but came from a total standard start. So I was raised in the most liberal, like Crouch End, but most liberal,
fully
secular,
understood.
like irreligious environment. So I'd never been to a church in my life. I think at school there was one boy in my class who went to it was Church of England, went as Anglican every week with his family. I thought that was incredibly weird. I went to school with mostly sort of maybe Reform liberal Jews typically, because in Golders Green, King Alfred's School.
King Alfred's.
Yeah,
you went to King Alfred's? No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating. That's a fascinating story in itself.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You went to King Alfred's.
Yeah, I went to Catholic secondary school, and then so and then also atheist secular. So like it was totally atheistic. Right?
Yeah.
My starting grammar was nil. But then as interestingly, it corresponded with a few things. One was not drinking. So I stopped drinking in 2018. So I've been out and lived my like most hedonistic, like the kind of, you follow through with the conclusions of that worldview. Which
You work for Lab Bible as well, right?
For Lab Bible and Vice. Interesting. Some interesting.
Did someone say you were Lad of the Year or something?
I was Lad of the Year.
What does that entail? How does one become
Employee of the Year, basically?
Right,
Great.
okay, fine.
But yeah, so interestingly as well, providentially, Vice was my first company I was in, and Lab Bible.
Yeah.
So I'd sort of gone through the conclusion of having a deeply secular, I guess, morally agnostic, totally blank sheet of do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt anybody, effectively worldview, which is the liberal worldview we all inhabit in this world. So I'd kind of lived that without even really thinking about it, questioning it, and was incredibly miserable off the back of it, right? Like going out, I remember during my time at Lad, went to visit friends at uni every single weekend. I had a bit of money, so I can go just get on it every weekend, right? And just live to the full, so to speak.
You dropped out of uni, is that
I dropped out
right?
of uni. I was there for 12 weeks before going to Vice and starting there as during work experience. So anyway, kind of spent many years just like going at, partying all the time, festivals all the time, just like living that hedonism to its full. And then my life kind of ordered itself before any faith, before any knowledge of any of this stuff, right? I didn't even know what a Catholic was. Genuinely, I didn't know any of it. When I met Millie, my now wife, and we sort of took ourselves out of all of that life. And I ended up becoming sober beginning of becoming sober like I'm Keith Richards or something, but like, stopped drinking in the beginning of 2018. And that was like quite a big thing. Obviously, when all your friends are going out, everyone's at uni, and I just like had this instinct, and now I know probably grace to sort of turn up to stop that, right?
And you haven't touched a drop since then?
No.
Wow.
No. I just had this sense of I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to be in that environment. So anyway, sort of stopped in 2018. And I think interestingly, from that moment on, my life started to become increasingly ordered. Everything started to become way better. And it's not to, again, my disorder of excess, which is I think part of my temperament being sanguine and being someone who's more impulsive, that's not in any way saying that drinking is a bad thing or anything like that. It's saying that for me, I had to stop it entirely because I couldn't be the guy. I hated like one pint. I hated it.
Yeah,
I was like,
same,
something
same.
more boring.
Yeah,
One
had
pint.
to
Like
go
now I
big.
feel a little bit slow, and you might as well just go for go all in and go out and end up at the box at 4 a.m, whatever it might be. Anyway, so too many times. But then my life started to order itself actually, and things just got better and better and better. And then me and Millie sort of started to settle down, and like ended up then, of course, getting married and having our first baby. And again, I had no idea about anything to do with religion at this point. But I think I
Sorry, just to jump in, and you still free. You don't have to share this, but was that you decided to have children at that age?
Well, we decided to get married, and we'd been engaged, and we're getting married, etc. And we found out, I think, a week before we got married that she was pregnant.
Okay, so it was a happy surprise.
Ordered itself really well. And then I think during that whole period, I was working at YMU at the time, and I think I was just in a worldview where I was starting to be more sensitive to spiritual things potentially, and just sensitive to maybe my own humility and the need for that, and my pride that had driven my whole life, that I knew what was right, I knew what was best, I knew what was true. And I just had this slight sense that maybe I didn't, right, for the first time in my life. And I think that came from a clear mind, but also an ordered life. That I was still ordering myself, and things were working, and everything, no doubt, as a result, started getting better and better. And then I remember very distinctly when I was at YMU going to LA for the offsite that we had. Millie was pregnant at the time. And the day that I was getting there was the day that Kanye West was launching his Jesus is King album rollout. And again, I'd never heard a public figure talk about Christ at all publicly at like such a level, especially someone like Kanye, who's not in that world of hedonism and, drugs, sex, rock and roll, and hip hop, right? Totally distinct from religion and Christianity, especially. But I was kind of drawn to it, and there was something about it, just the providence of I was landing in LA, and then I knew people who were on his team, and they were part of our music division. So we ended up going to the listening party. I was there, like all the Kardashians are there, whatever else, and got to see it in Staples Center. And he'd built the Sunday service, sort of space. And there was something about that whole rollout and everything around it. And I think, as I know now, God uses people in interesting ways. And I think Kanye West was definitely a massive factor for me at the time, just to warm me up to what one may call a religious experience, or even just a religious sensitivity. Because I'd never been to church, never done any of that. Totally rejected it. And not only rejected it, I like actively hated it. I had a real passion against it. Big fan of Richard Dawkins and Peter Hitchens. Chris Hitchens, etc. Like Sam Harris. Those are my guys. Yeah. Because it validated my lifestyle, not because it was true, but just it was pleasing to me, because I was like, well, okay, this gives me an excuse to now ignore all of that and pretend it's nonsense. I remember literally sneering, laughing at Rory. I know at King Alfred's, if you know it, there wasn't really Rory as an agenda, was it? It's totally liberal and secular, but we did a little bit, and I just remember laughing at it, saying it was totally nonsense and stupid. Anyway, how wrong I was. And you fast forward, go to this listening party, and there was something about that experience there. And in America as well, it's very different. Religion's more in the bones of America as a country, and people were praying, and I was like, this is really weird. There's something that's above me here. Something, I don't know what it is, a little inkling of something a bit deeper. And from there, I remember just warming up ever so slightly to the reality that I may have been wrong. That was it. Let me just be open. Let me be open.
Which is a very important quality, by the way. And I think it's one that's increasingly lost on human beings at this time from myriad ways, is this idea that everyone thinks they know. And I'm talking about both sides of the political spectrum here. Like, they think they know everything and they know best. And I think it's a very dangerous place to be. And I think anyone having the humility to admit they might be wrong or open to change, especially at that age when a lot of people at that age think they know everything. It's a common trait. It often comes later, that awareness.
Totally.
So I think it's a very good reflection on yourself. But please go on.
And I think I had a bunch of moments like when I was, going out partying and everything else, where you have those, I don't know, I remember reading a book actually at YMU at the time, which was like this sobriety book. I can't remember the name of it, but it talked about those moments when you're just at that like rock bottom of, I know you're checking your heart. Whatever it might be. We've probably been there, right? We were just, am I going to die? Whatever it is. And I'd had a number of those through that last couple of years, and I just could picture them. And it was this humility of, remember where you were almost. Like, remember that. You don't want to go back to that, but also like how low you can go, right? And all of us can go. Now I understand why, and original sin, etc. we can get into. And it ties directly into parenting, by the way, all of this stuff. It's very important from a parenting perspective. But anyway, so go down the line, and then ended up being like, okay, well, I'm also sensing in the world a clear division between evil and good. And I was being more sensitive to that, seeing in sort of celebrities and people I was even working with, and some of the stuff I could just sense this sort of overt evil, even like Satanism, quite overtly. There was quite a darkness that I was just picking up on more and more and more. And I think it's, again, sober mind, etc., being more sort of intentional about what I saw in culture. And I was sort of always saying to myself, well, look, if that is existing and it's almost in rebellion to something on the other side, quite clearly, right? Even the open Satanism in Hollywood, for example, whatever it might be, that they're doing it for a reason. They're doing it in protest against something that is on the other side of the fence. And if that exists, then maybe that exists. That was like a first step for me, actually, in seeing that. And then from there, I ended up, trying to work it out, and ended up buying a Bible. And I never read a Bible in my life at all at 21, 20, 22, whatever it was. And I remember just reading for the first time King James Bible. Would never read that now, but I read it at the time, and it matched. It was almost like this perfect, I guess, encasing of all of my experience in the world, and my experience of good and evil, my experience of, I guess, voices in your head, the spiritual reality that I didn't really know too much, but I had a sense of. It almost perfectly meshed in, and I'd never seen it explained like that before. And there was just a moment where I was like, oh, I really didn't know. I really was wrong. And I started to then open myself up increasingly. And then, you keep knocking, you keep opening, you keep searching, you keep going down the rabbit holes. On YouTube was like a massive part of this.
Yeah.
Watching, apologetics and arguments and trying to reason my way through it. And I ended up effectively reading and learning my way into, from totally atheistic and antagonistic point of view for religion, into Catholicism, and now into like quite deep traditional Catholicism that has been this end game of 4 or 5 years of total kind of immersion into the ultimate question. And if you look at, we can get into maybe some of the argument, talk about it, I'm more than happy to, but it was this total, I guess, case study of what grace can do to the soul, because I was one person here and a totally different person there. And then of course you get to things like, I got baptized, remember 19th of December 2020, me and my son actually at the same time. And it was just this amazing thing of like, oh wow, like the transformation interiorly from the person that I was in 2017, 18 to the person that I was in 2020 was miraculous, like absolute night and day.
Have you found it difficult in the world in which you operate? We all live in a fairly metropolitan area. We all exist in a fairly metropolitan world and industry. Has it been difficult to openly speak about this? Because I feel like most people can be fairly snide to a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah.
And was it fair to say that you might have been one of those people?
I laughed in my class at Genesis. I literally laughed at it. I said it was stupid. We studied the Reformation. I was like, good, like the Protestants got them. I didn't care, right? Because ultimately we all have a religion and we all have, we all have something that is our highest ethic or our highest driver, for our biggest driver. And for me in my life, it was self. Which is ultimately what Luciferianism is.
Or maybe money, like not for you, but I think society in general. So I actually chime with so much what you're saying. I just have a slightly different slant on it. Yeah. And like my thing is like, whether it's original sin or whatever phrase you want to use, I think where we've gone wrong is that we have worshipped the wrong God, and that God is money. And I'm someone who's a capitalist person, clearly benefited from the elements of capitalism, but I think uncapped capitalism is extremely dangerous. And I think why we're having these wars, which, yes, we all have an element of sin in us and maybe move towards those things almost autonomously. But do any of us, does anyone in your life has they ever wanted there to be a war? Like, I do believe there is invisible powers at play in society that is these almost different kind of humans that exist in this different world financially.
I would say the demonic, right?
Yeah, and I think money is the root of all evil. I really do believe that. As someone who understands the value of it, understands the ability from someone going from here to here, and that mobility being incredibly important to lift you and others out of bad times, amazing thing that we can do. And the idea of social mobility is really important. We have to protect it. We have to reward people for doing good things. But to a point, I do not agree with this argument that, like, if you get rid of the billionaires, then all these opportunities are going to go. No, they won't. If someone, in my personal opinion, and like I think it's quite clear if we know anything to this podcast, Rory, I'm very happy to share my opinion, but I'm also very open to being wrong. I've never said I am right and other people are wrong. But my personal opinion is, if you get to, let's say £100 million, let's say, it's a lot of money, right? That I'll never see in my life, nowhere near it. And I know that to be the case because of how I'm motivated, right? If you get to £100 million in your bank and you still have something in you to go and earn 10 times that, I actually think you're mentally ill. And I think that's a really...
It's ambition. That's just
but why do you need more?
Everybody thinks this, that's richer than them. Everybody thinks tax the people a bit richer than me.
But
they're
why
richer than
100 million? You and your kin and your next generations are fine. What is driving you?
You're drawing the line here because that's richer than you. What about the geezer that says, I think I should take all your money, mate, because you're richer than me?
No, because I could happily make that number lower. I'm trying to say, like, I think someone being able to go from nothing or something to 100 million is an amazing thing.
But you're drawing an arbitrary line that won't affect you.
I think, yeah.
But if you make it lower, so I'm using people's
What
argument.
about if I went, anyone over 25 grand, give me everything that you...
Well, that's completely unreasonable because there's an amount of money
Because you've
you
got
need
more
to
than
survive.
that.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
No, if
but
the
you've got more than
I'm
that.
telling you right now, if the world... which will never
Everybody
happen-
wants to tax people richer than them.
No,
Everybody
no,
goes,
but it's
I think
not-
we should do the billionaires. Yeah, I think we should do the billionaires because I'm not one.
No, it's not as simple as
It's,
that.
it's
But there's a
hypocritical.
reason.
It's hypocritical
not
to go.
hypocritical.
It's hypocritical to go tax people
There's
richer
a
than me
reason
more.
people aren't billionaires.
There's a reason that you think that the line should be 100 million and not 100 grand because you've got 100 grand
No, if it
and
was
you haven't
100
got
grand,
100
I'll sign
million.
up to it tomorrow. I would personally sign up to that tomorrow.
You wouldn't.
I swear
You
on
wouldn't.
my children's
You
lives.
could do
I'll
that.
sign up to
You could do
tomorrow.
that, Spencer.
Yeah, but
No, but you could do
it
it.
doesn't fix the problem for society.
No, but if it means that much to you, you are totally entitled
Yeah, but
to
that's
give
not-
every
you're not
penny you've
hearing
got
my
over
argument.
100 grand away.
Just hear
give
my
it
argument.
to a charity.
Hear my argument and then rebuttal. Because my point is, the reason I'm choosing that figure, right, is because, and I'd like to get Jordan's take on this, is because when you get to extreme level of wealth, regardless of your barometer for that, I'm talking about the wealth of nations. I'm talking about the wealth of people that can decide industries and influence politicians and governments, which I think we can all agree here. Someone with £10 million in the bank cannot do that, right? Someone with 100 million or a billion, more so, is what I'm really trying to get at, can do that. And that is, democracy is a facade. It doesn't exist anymore. It hasn't for a while. They're all bought and sold, these politicians, by government, by corporations. We need to stop that as a human race. I firmly believe we need to stop that. I'm not trying. The reason I'm putting 100 million is I want people to have social mobility and be able to make something for their life. That's a lot of money. I'd happily have it lower. I'd happily have that bar lower. I'm trying to appease your side of the argument and my side of the argument by having a number which I think is extreme wealth.
Yeah,
and no one can,
my side of the argument
what
isn't
do you
this.
think is bad if someone can't earn 101 million? What's the bad?
Because I think what you do is you curb ambition. The reason why some people make it to billionaires is because they invent something that changes everybody's life and makes everything better. If you remove
Invent
the
it
ambition,
and have 100 million for inventing it.
but
What's wrong?
that's not the ambition, is it?
No, if your ambition is money, yeah, and that's a problem. I think that's a dangerous mentality, which is why we have wars. If someone's ambition is to invent something, 'cause they want to fix the world, they don't care about how much money they make. And I don't subscribe to the thought of process that capping it at whatever number stops ambition. It means that we have to share the ambition. It means one person doesn't get to become Elon Musk, and maybe if there's 10 of versions of him with less money, you might not get that one guy who gets us to Mars, but I'm happy with that if we have less wars as a result. Like, that's my personal thoughts on it.
I would say these conversations are impossible without a moral standard. So I will always say, and this is why it's very difficult to reconcile these things in a secular liberal, because it's all subjective, right? Whereas actually there should be an objective sort of moral principle that comes through around the notion of private property. Is that moral? Is that not? Is there, the notion of ultimately charity and support? I don't think you'd have a problem if those billionaires were helping to solve the problems in the world.
Of course, yeah. The
And the issue-
Patagonia guys,
right.
all these things, yeah.
So you wouldn't say, oh no, he shouldn't have his money, right? The concept of, I guess, altruism or giving back should be absolutely at the heart of every virtuous soul, but we have original sin. So it comes back to that. Of course we're not going to do that. Human beings are driven by greed and pride and materialism and sensuality and pleasure, and that is a never-ending goal, which actually proves the immortality of the soul, because there's no cap to that attraction to more and more and more. The soul can never be satisfied, which is why a lot of these incredibly rich people end up becoming miserable and depressed, because there's no end to that game. So I would say everything gets solved by one word, which is grace, and that is the enlightening of the mind and the strength of the will towards the good and towards the true. And that can only be done through, ultimately, conformity to Catholic moral principles, and we can get into that. And if that is truly from God himself and ultimately to God, because if in that case, and this is the impact of Christ, is the impact of, the Roman world. If you look back at history, what transformed Rome? They were incredibly rich, doing the most hedonistic, crazy things you could imagine if you look back in history, but the whole society transformed. They became totally charitable. They became, about lifting everybody up, not in some false sense of equality, but in supporting people in their state in life, whether they're kings, nobles, whether they're aristocrats, or whether they're...
It's a great film, though.
Great film.
So here, Thomas O'Malley Cat. Thomas O'Malley Cat's the boy.
He's great. He's great. Or whether they're peasants, right? So everyone was given a standard in life where they could do the ultimate goal, which is to build their family and live a virtuous life. So it comes back to that always. And the problem is, you're right. Like, when there's an endless, attraction and ambition for money and pleasure and riches and success and greed, of course, there's no end game to that, and that can
Yeah.
cause destruction. But you're looking at it, I would say, more from a materialistic worldview than a.
But the problem is,
moral
though,
worldview,
I agree
which
with what you said, but I personally believe society needs some kind of reset because we're too far gone. Because let's say everyone in this room and everyone that isn't in this class of super wealthy, whatever you set that limit to, which is much more people than aren't, by the way. Much more people are not in that world, right? There's millions and billions of us. We don't run the world. So how do we stop them?
We stop worrying about this world. So the problem is, again, it's a worldview that places the end game as being this life. So when you're focused too much on this life and on materialism and ultimately on squeezing as much as you can out of this world, you're missing out on your eternal
But do you not
life,
think, like, so
which
again,
is really the end game of our entire existence.
100% with you, and I think all of us could get on board with that. So I think where my issue comes from is I think we can all agree, take ourselves out of the equation. No one, and maybe some people disagree with this, maybe, but no one can argue to me, in my opinion, this world is optimal, right? As a world, because we have wars, we have famine, we have all these terrible things, right? I don't know the full facts and figures behind this, but I would like to think there's definitely a more optimal version of this life achievable, where the planet is better protected, where the people, maybe the top 1% have a lot less, but the bottom 80% have a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? And it gets them from, we've talked about the correlation in happiness and money, and it's huge once you get to the minimum living standards taken care of. Then it drops off a cliff. Let's get everyone up to that. Let's get as many people up to minimum living standards as we can. Then the world will be more optimal. Hopefully there'll be less war. Whatever the thing is for people, whether it's finding faith, whether it's doing ayahuasca, whatever the thing is that makes people that are leading the planet not the way they are, I think it would be optimal. And we're not there. So whilst letting go of this issue with the world and just being happy with our station could be good for us.
Yeah, go on.
What do you tell the people that are starving to death or getting blown up?
Of course,
what do they do?
But all of these problems, right? They all come back to that notion of sin. The world is plagued with sin. It's a world full of people who are out for greed, out for destruction of others, the most heinous crimes. How are some of the crimes that we talk about and we read and we see, how do they even happen? But it's a world that's plagued by sin, and that's because this is a fallen race. So you have to understand original sin to understand why you're angry about the situation and why you can see that there's something fundamentally wrong in the world, because there's an evil that plagues this world.
So does your solution, if we all go through something similar to you, which I think is objectively a good thing, like what you've gone through, from whatever you were as a younger man to what you are now, it's amazing for the world. I'm very happy for it, right? And everyone, I think, has different ways they can find that, but it's definitely objectively good. But how do we tackle this what you describe as this Satanism, this darkness? Is that always going to exist, in your opinion? Will it always be there?
Always going to exist in a fallen world, which is ultimately run by Luciferianism, Satanism, and by evil. That is the core. That is the root of this. This world is plagued, as I said, plagued by sin and plagued by original sin. Now, the only way to counteract that is through Christ and is through the faith. And the reason why is because Jesus Christ, and again, it all comes back to this one central question of history, which is why we have our dating the way we have our dating, which is why we look back at history and we see this thread of raising man up or bringing man down. And that's lifted up by the supernatural support and help of God through grace, right? And that's why societies were able to lift. And that's also why when you leave Christ, you leave God, you leave the faith, you leave the sacraments, society falls. And you can look at history in that apex of society rising up through Christendom and then down through ultimately the Renaissance and into the French Revolution, into Protestantism, etc. prior to that, and then into the 19th century and the 20th century, the most bloody century of all time. As society rises up to Christ, it gets better, and the objective standard of living for even the poorest people, wealth is not the factor of merit and happiness and value, but like Christ was a carpenter who lived in a dirt poor house, which you can still see in Italy. That's one for another time. But you have this whole world.
So he's in Italy. I thought he was in
the House of Loreto. No, the House of Loreto. So the amazing miracle. Get into the miracle.
Yeah, because the other thing I'm interested in is what's it called? You'll know loads more about this than me. The stained cloth.
The Holy Shroud.
The Holy Shroud. Yeah, that's quite.
I would get into that for it.
Yeah.
And it's endless. No, there's an endless palette of proof points that show, and there are reasons why. But you can look at history in that apex of rising and declining in relation to how close culture and society is to Christ. And what happens when you have Christendom? You have the universities, you have the hospitals. Look back at Europe and what the contribution of the Catholic culture did to the average standard of women, the average standard of normal everyday people, because there isn't a division then. There's no division of, well, we're up here and you're down there. There's actually the necessity with the ultimate pain and potential eternal pain, effectively, of kings who neglect their people. If you look at the monarchical structure of France, for example, you look at Louis IX, Saint King, unbelievable king, who he would go in disguise and go and live within his subjects, the peasants, and he would help them. He'd serve in effectively food banks at the time. This is the king of France, right? This is somebody who would, as the Blessed Sacrament, the Holy Eucharist was passing, would get down on his knees in front of everybody and be there at Mass with everyone. Everyone is equal at the communion.
So he sounds like a good lad, right? He sounds like a good lad who's obviously been born into a position and not let it affect him. But I really struggle with the idea of being born better than someone else.
But better. Is it better? Why is your apex of human value materialism? Why is it wealth?
Only in the essence that not
privilege.
The people that are at the bottom of that rung are struggling.
But in that time, he has the highest duty and responsibility to look after the person who's.
It's almost like more of a commune, not saying communist, but a commune idea where everyone has their role within the society to help.
Which is why, again, in those ages, you have the kings and the nobles who were doing their job and doing their duty. It's about duty.
But that could be in a tribal society, for example. That could be a chief, or it could be the captain. Whatever you want to work.
There's more responsibility. You don't always want to be the chief.
Yeah.
But it comes with a hefty cross. Because you have to bear the responsibility of looking after your people. And in an ordered Catholic society, you have the potential pain, as you know, of hell forever. If you do not do your duty in your role as king, you have more weight. So in some ways...
It shouldn't necessarily come with wealth or assets, like the royal family in this country own an incredible amount of land and all these things. Like, do they need that?
A need is because, again, the world is plagued with sin. How they get there is part of the problem and everything else. And yeah, I mean, what the Protestants did in this country was, I mean, if you look at the history of the 16th century, look at Henry VIII, look at the absolute devastation, the taking of monasteries. I mean, back in the day, a lot of that wealth would be given into monasteries, would be given into universities in the Middle Ages, would be given to build the most incredible churches. Maybe you've seen, I don't know, the cathedral in Cologne and places like that, and St. Peter's. Like, that's where money went to lift up, because they knew, and they had the wisdom to know that if you build the faith and you give people, wherever you are, rich or poor, you give them the altar, you give them Holy Mass, you give them the sacraments. That's actually all that matters in this life, because that's what's going to get you to heaven. And ultimately, this life is not really of much interest or meaning other than being a vehicle for merit for heaven. And that's why they invested so much. That's why you go to Europe. What's the only thing worth seeing in Europe? Really?
What's your stance?
Cathedrals and the churches.
Barcelona.
You go to Valencia.
Still not finished, is it? The one in Barcelona. When are they going to bloody finish?
It's not my
But even
favorite.
here, even here, there's beautiful, like Lincoln Cathedral. Like, there's beautiful.
England was Catholic for, I don't know if you know the history of England. England was Catholic for 900 years.
Henry VIII, wasn't it?
Until Henry VIII destroyed it.
Yeah, because he wanted a divorce.
Why? Original sin. He wanted to marry.
Well, really, he wanted a son. He wanted a son, didn't he? That's why.
No. The first one. So he was married to Catherine of Aragon, who was the.
Yeah, he fell out because he wanted a divorce with the Spanish.
He wanted survived.
Yeah, well done. He wanted an annulment because he wanted the annulment approved by the Pope. The Pope said no, so he said, "Well, I'm going to become the head
Create
of
my own church
myself,
and I'm going to kill anybody who doesn't agree with me." And you had some of the greatest martyrs of the faith, Saint Thomas More being one of my favorite saints.
Yeah,
one of my favorite from all time, Man for Seasons.
Was he burnt?
There's
a terrible.
But you had Thomas Becket. You had others who basically stood up to these monarchs and Henry VIII.
Guy Fawkes connected in all this as well.
A little bit later. Yeah, so he was rebellious because ultimately Catholicism was outlawed in England for hundreds of years, and still to this day you can't be a Catholic king. So the king of this country, the Queen, cannot be Catholic.
Call it the Church of Henry, don't they?
Yeah, and so Anglicanism is Church of England is based on Henry VIII's lust for his mistress, Anne Boleyn, who, interestingly, as I read in the book, was his daughter. Did you know that?
What?
Mm-hmm.
That I did not know.
I read in the book on the history of Protestantism in England. Anne Boleyn was his daughter.
And Berlin Grand, Mustang's old stadium.
Did he know that?
About that?
I don't know if he knew that, but I'm sure he did.
That's mental. That's
I read in a good history. I read in a really good source. It was a great book on the history of Protestantism in this country. My jaw was on the floor. I was like, what do you mean? But that's the basis of the Church of England today.
Wow.
But if you know that 900 years of, you go around, look at the old cathedrals prior to the Reformation, and you see England in its glory, you see small towns raised up. And again, that's because everything hinges on the Mass, everything hinges on the sacraments, because that is ultimately your gateway to heaven.
So what I mean, I think it's quite clear we could do an 8-part, 5-hour each podcast.
It's been brilliant.
What's your stance on other religions? It's quite clear that Catholicism speaks to you, and you feel that is the sort of way forward. Where in your sort of understanding do things like Buddhism, Judaism, Hinduism, all these other faiths and religions chime with that?
Well, I'd say, okay, you can break it down a little bit without getting into too much.
Yeah, not getting hot water.
Yeah. What I will say is this: as an atheist who hated religion, had no bias to religion, didn't know anything. My pursuit was always the truth, right? What's true, and what can I prove to be true through reason and through revelation effectively, right? What can I prove through my own study, reading my way into this? And all I would say is this, that if the big question for everybody in the world, right, to study for themselves and to come to a conclusion on is Jesus Christ God? And did he raise himself on the third day? If that's true, the ramifications are infinite. If that's not true, then you can do what you want. But if that's true, there are conclusions that come from that. And I think it's worth it for all of us to be humble in our place in history, to know that even in England, we sit on 900 years of Catholic history. The culture that we revere is based on those principles that Henry VIII tried to destroy, but ultimately the virtues that we have, the civil like rule of law, all of these things, the culture we have, the nature of family, the nature of villages, community, all of those things were based on Catholic principles that were brought into this country by Augustine in the 500s. You know, we can't divorce ourselves from that history. Be humble and explore the question, as I did. And if we do that and we come to the conclusion, then you can say, okay, well, what flows from that truth? So in a way, there are tens of thousands of religions. There's tens of thousands of Protestant sects. There's tens of thousands of different viewpoints on life and quote unquote the big questions. But fundamentally, reason to that individual point. And it goes same with the Jewish. You know, if you know the history of, it's different with Judaism, because the central question is not so much does God exist or any of those things are already there. It's, is Jesus Christ the Jewish Messiah? Is he the Messiah? That's their central question. Reconcile.
Or is he a very naughty boy?
Or was he a naughty boy that does it? So reconcile.
Do you know that quote?
No, go on.
Life of Brian, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Shows my age. I'm
I know.
And maybe your age. But no, reconcile that. And for everybody, just reconcile that question. That's the only thing I can say. So in a way, other religions, like, it's not really of interest to me in so far as if that's true, then those answer themselves.
Can they all be true at the same time?
That's contradiction. And the principle of reason, first principle of reason, is something cannot be and not be at the same time. So if you have two opposing statements of truth, that can either that's water or it's, I don't know, orange juice.
Have you ever read or watched The Life of Pi? You know that book?
Yeah, I did. Well,
the idea is that he's a young kid and he takes a bit of each religion. He's going to a Christian church, he's going to a Hindu temple and all these things. And they're like, you can't do that. And he's like, yeah, you can. I like them all. I'm interested in them all. And then he has this crazy experience.
Well, but I would always say as well, right? Always say, challenge them all.
Yeah.
Put it to the test. Put it in a jury in your own mind. It's worth it. If this is the biggest question that we all have to reconcile with, there should be no fear of saying, right, I'm going to objectively, from a total neutral perspective, put every religion that I'm interested in, or I to your point, like I like the look of in some way, shape, or form, put Buddhism on the table, put Catholicism on the table, put Anglicanism, put Baptism, whatever it might be, put them all on the table, Islam, and just challenge them objectively.
I think you said something really nice in that phrase, which was something like be humble and explore it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's such a good phrase for everything in life,
Totally.
like politics or anything you want to get into. Just be open-minded. I do think it's a skill that we're losing in society.
I totally agree. But what I will say about Catholicism specifically is that, and this is the overwhelming evidence that I came to on a personal level, is that you cannot deny when you dig into, and I actually got this stuff not even from Catholics. I didn't even know again at this point what Catholic was. From predominantly evangelicals in America who were quite good at the apologetic stuff. They were decent, some of them I found. And a couple of them talked about, I'd never heard the evidence before. For example, for the resurrection, I'd never heard that. And you dig into it and no one with a right mind can even, can get through that evidence and say, honestly and humbly, that case isn't absolutely watertight. Things like the empty tomb. The body's still not been found. Go to the Holy Sepulchre today, you can visit it. There's no body in there. Why? How? The fact that even his enemies at the time didn't even challenge it, insofar as they challenged it once and they said that they stole the body, but then the body still has never been found. You see hundreds of witnesses at the time. You see in the Gospels written between 50 AD and 90 AD. You know, I think the nearest historical text in terms of time span for when it was written to the event, I can't remember, it was a few hundred years after, was maybe 300, 400 years. These were written within 20, 30 years. So you see all these things, and you see 4 separate testimonies corroborating the same story in different ways. You also see, as I said, independent historians, Jewish historians, Tertullian and others, who corroborated the same thing. And then you look at, again, our Lord, you look at Christ and you say, he fulfilled 426 prophecies in the Old Testament. Every single one, whether it was like the prophecy in Daniel, what week he would be born, that was made 300 years prior, came on the same week. Whether it was where, in Bethlehem, that was prophesied. Even things like Melchizedek, the priest who came out of nowhere and offered a sacrifice of bread and wine in Genesis, obviously a symbol of the Holy Eucharist. You look at, the prophet Malachi, the clean oblation, the sacrifice that would be eternal. as prophesied. You even then look at things like Our Lady's Magnificat, saying that all generations will call her blessed. How would she know that? She's been the Blessed Virgin Mary for the whole of time. 400 prophecies fulfilled in one person. Isaiah, the suffering servant, look at the Psalms. David, endless to the T, right? That his bones wouldn't break. They'd be pierced on the side. It's overwhelmed. Like if you were to put it in any, and I think this is intentional, right? That it's not photographic evidence. You need a leap of, as you would in a court, beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
But you need to take that leap of, I cannot, as an honest person, look at this palette of evidence, which is overwhelming. Never mind the miracles there at the time, but also since. Infinite miracles, and also the fruit, civilization, the universities that we revere, the hospitals, the culture today. Look at America, look at Our Lady of Guadalupe in the 1500s, 9 million Aztecs converted in 2 years. Off the back of that, culture totally raised. The Iroquois, you can go on and on. Lords, Fatima, like you get into this stuff and the evidence is so overwhelming. The shroud in and of itself, it shows everything. It shows the 60 wounds that corroborate exactly with the amount of wounds from the scourging. It shows the bread dripping. You can see it in the shroud. The dripping of the sauce from our Lord's right hand, because it was the tablecloth at the Last Supper. I don't know if you know that, but that's what he was wrapped in. You can see the whole of the Last Supper pictured there, right? You can see every cut corroborated with the story.
My dad used to have these. Have you these people? What's it called? There's a thing. There's a name for it. Stigmata.
Yeah.
My dad has these basically scars in his hand in the area, and apparently a thing that some people are born with.
St. Francis of Assisi.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a sign.
Yeah.
No.
There was a film.
Padre Pio, you can see like all I would say is, because it informs parenting and all this stuff, it's so fundamental, understanding original sin, literally having that objective standard in your life that drives you above your own subjectivism and your own sense of what's right and wrong. Having that objective, that leads your family in such a powerful way, because you then have a standard that's above you. And everyone can unite in that, right?
That's bang on. I think 100%. Whether you believe and want to research the stuff Jordan's clearly researched, I think it's incredible your knowledge. And I also think people that are Catholics won't know a tenth of what stuff you know. So it's amazing, and I'm fascinated by listening to you talk. I think regardless of whether someone goes that way or another way, if you have a faith and it leads to you being what you would say is someone more full of grace or closer to God, and you behave in that way, then it's great. It's objectively great. We had Manny on recently, who's another Christian. I said the same thing. Abraham Lincoln has this quote ascribed to him, which I think, in my opinion, says it best. When he was asked about whether he was religious, and he says, if I do good, I feel good. If I do bad, I feel bad. That is my religion. And if a religion...
It's a bit of a cop-out for him.
Yeah, well, maybe he wasn't a believer.
So talking about a conscience... No, he wasn't.
Which is very controversial in the time, right? In America...
Very quickly, America was the only country the first country, in human history to not have a religion. Yeah. And look at where that's landed.
But if whatever you subscribe to, if it gets you closer to that, then I'm all for it. And I love it. Before you go quickly...
Yes.
You've got 2 kids on the way. I'm not saying they have to support #United,
very kind,
but you're the first ever receivers of these, because we just got
They are beautiful.
0 to 6 months.
Nice.
I do at least what I want is I want a picture of them in this at some point. Can you do it for me?
100%.
I love that, mate.
Good luck with everything. Good luck.
Thank you.
So in the next 7 weeks, right? What's your due date?
So I
5
think
kids.
it'll be 17th of November.
Mate.
Maybe I'll come on and we can talk about the scars from that.
We would absolutely love to have you back. It's a fantastic episode. Really brilliant.
So good. Jordan, make sure you check out Jordan's stuff where he belongs. We'll put links in the description. And yeah, amazing, mate. Thank you very much.
No, thank you guys.